Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella Johnston. I am the host of the Intern Whisperer Podcast, and this is brought to you by Employers for Change, of which I am the CEO and founder. We help hiring teams get matched to intern talent based on mission, values, beliefs, and core skills. Today's guest is an amazing man I've known for quite some time. His name is Jerrid Kalakay. He is a professor. We'll give a shameless plug for Valencia College. I love Valencia College. He is an author, an entrepreneur, a researcher, and a change maker. He believes in the power of education and entrepreneurship to make a positive impact. And he is deeply passionate about social entrepreneurship, innovation, leadership, education, and social change. So welcome to the show, Jerrid.
Thank you so much, Isabella, for having me.
I'm so proud of you. You have a book out. That is so exciting.
I do. It's been a long time coming, and I made a goal last year to finally write something, and I'm excited that it's out in the world.
How long did it take you to write it?
Most of the year.
Really?
I mean,
yeah, because I know how busy you are.
Yeah, just kind of thinking about it took a while, and then what do you want to say, and what do you want to put in, what don't you want to put in, and all those kind of questions was really what I was wrestling with for a while, and then once it got kind of going, these are conversations that I've had over the last 16 or so years in education with students, with fellow colleagues, with mentees. And so I just started saying, you know what, I'm going to start writing down the things that we talk about and the things that the advice I give and the advice I hear. And I just started writing it down. And then once that started rolling, it just kind of happened.
Well, I know we're going to dig into this deeper, and I kind of jumped the gun on one of my first questions because, my listeners don't even know hardly anything about you. I know we talked about this before we got on the air, but you'd been on the show back in a previous season. So I'll be sure to connect those two. So people go back and hear, version 1, this is version 2. So take us through your career path and how you became a professor. What did you do first? A thought leader and a social entrepreneur, and what sparked your interest?
Yeah, so it'd be wonderful if I could say I just, I was 16 and I planned it all out and it's gone exactly the way I planned. That would be awesome, but it's far from reality. The way I came to this work is I always had a desire to create positive change, to leave the world a little bit better than when I came into it. That was as early as I can remember, something that just was kind of in me. And so originally I went to school for business. My original plan was to be famous and be in the music industry and be a giant CEO and so forth. And during that pathway, I found education to be incredibly important. And I felt that education was one of the most powerful tools we have in the world to create positive change. And my trajectory kind of changed a little bit from there. And I decided to get a master's degree. And originally my master's degree at Florida State University was in order for me to work with concerts and events and programming. And that was what I was going to do. I was going to work in the music industry in that realm. But as I was going through that program, I fell in love with leadership and leadership development of specifically young people. And so my first job out of my master's program, I worked at a college locally, and I was the campus and news and media programmer. And so I oversaw the radio station that the institution had. I oversaw the newspaper and some other things. And there was the first time I really got to teach leadership. And I fell in love with that. And working with the young up and coming leaders, there were so many of them that were doing amazing work in the community through volunteerism, through community service, that they inspired me. And I said to myself, wow, this is a really neat way to help the community, working with these young people. And what sparked my interest in social entrepreneurship, I didn't know anything about social entrepreneurship. But what I was witnessing was these students that were working in the community. They would work for 3-4 years in the community, doing community service, leading alternative breaks. Where the alternative spring breaks, where they wouldn't go on a traditional spring break to the beach, but rather they'd go and work on a community issue, hunger and homelessness, or working with migrant farm workers, or all kinds of different things, clearing trails for the Florida trails, etc. And one of the students, who was the leader of almost every trip, came up to me at one point and said that, well, I'm getting ready to graduate. I'm going to go to law school, and shared with me that her family doesn't work for free, and that they don't know anything about her community service work, which had been a bulk of my relationship with her. And when I meet her parents at graduation, not to mention any of her community service work. And that was it was a very impactful moment for me, because I saw this student who should be proud of all the work that she had done. Instead of being proud, she was ashamed and was going to hide it from her family. And I said, wow, wouldn't it be neat if she had an ability or a vehicle to celebrate all of the great work she did? And that's when I stumbled upon social entrepreneurship. It was back in, I think, 2010 when I really became aware of it. And I see it as a way for folks to satisfy both the desire to make money, but also to create positive change. The reason that her family didn't work for free is because they didn't believe in laboring without just compensation, and had been very well. They're pretty wealthy and had been very successful, but they didn't see a vehicle for community service as a ability to make a living. And so they sent the student, their student, off to school to get an education, and then go, carry on in the family business, and become a lawyer in her case. And they didn't see any other way. But with social entrepreneurship, you can make a market-driven solutions, and you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, in that you can make capital wealth, you can make money, and also create social change or create social impact. And that's what really sparked my interest.
That is really a wonderful case study. And what was so sad, though, is that her family didn't see the value of volunteering, because if all they valued was money and what it could buy them, that was very self-centered. Instead of, like, money is a tool that could bring about huge change. The gift of time is something that you cannot get back. And to give that is more powerful than money.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know what their motivations are or whatnot. I would dare to try to assume, but their entire approach was very typical, and is very typical of a lot of people. They, if I do X, Y, Z, I want to be compensated, etc. And that's true in the working world, but it doesn't have to be true in every aspect. And there are a lot of folks who volunteer and perform community service, and they do it for all the right reasons. It was unfortunate when she told me this, and my heart broke a little bit. Fast forward a few years, she had graduated. I saw her outside of the college. She had come back for a visit about 3 or 4 years later after graduation. And the student that I knew was no longer the student that was in front of me when I saw them, on the street. And what I mean by that is the joy and the smile and the sparkle in her eye. All the years I knew her as an undergrad were gone. She had gone to law school, had graduated, had been very successful, got a job at a big law firm, and was doing all the things. She had even gotten engaged. She introduced me to her fiance, and we had a really nice conversation, and everything she said was wonderful. But the joy in her voice had left. And I don't know if I just caught her on a bad moment, a bad time. I have no idea. They could have been arguing right before I walked up. I have no idea what was going on. But I've got to believe, to a certain degree, that she had stopped with her community service, had stopped doing the things that she had really enjoyed, that she had done for 4 years at, during her college years. She had stopped doing that. And I've got to believe that some of that joy went with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I agree with you. Because I find it very fulfilling to volunteer, to mentor, to I have so many students that I have placed in unpaid internships that have found the real value of it is that there was something that was more important than money. They saw it as, okay, what I'm getting in exchange is the gift of somebody's knowledge, their wisdom, the opportunity to be corrected and to understand how to do something, the right way according to whatever the company policies might be. They found it so liberating, which I know you and I are on the same page as to all of those things. Not every experience that's unpaid is meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Well, and obviously working in an internship that's unpaid is has all kinds of rewards. And that's how, when I was in school, there was no paid internships anywhere. Everyone had to put in their time. Now, luckily, at least there's a good number of paid internships. So there's that. And Valencia does a really good job. I'll give another shameless plug to Valencia College. They do a really good job of finding as many paid internships in the Central Florida area as possible. But that's not necessarily the same thing as community service, as going and serving at a soup kitchen or building a house with Habitat for Humanity or some of these things. Community service is really part of the social safety net that we have as citizens.
Yeah.
And if people weren't doing those things, our society as a whole would be so much worse off. And whether you do it once a year at Thanksgiving or you do it every single weekend, just that little bit of give back and seeing the impacts of, whatever it is, sorting, turkeys or serving on a soup line or whatnot, those experiences remain with you. And when we start to think about, okay, well, I live in this, nice subdivision or this nice out in the country or wherever, and I can't imagine being homeless. Well, when you really look at the data, most people in the United States are only a couple paychecks away from being homeless. I mean, one serious medical issue, one serious injury, one serious illness, and all of a sudden now you've done everything you were supposed to do, and yet you might still be in a situation very similar to that. Where you find yourself homeless. I mean, so many of the times that I've gone and worked with people, whether it be in a homeless shelter or whatnot, I almost always meet someone who did everything right in their life. They have a degree from Harvard University or Princeton or these giant fantastic schools, and they've done everything right in their life, but they lost their wife to illness, to cancer or something, and they depleted all their savings going through that process. And now all of a sudden they can't afford their bills, and most people in the United States are 1 to 2 paychecks away from that. As scary as that is, it could be any of us.
Oh yeah. I've walked in those shoes. I have been in that place because starting a startup is something that is very consuming and not for the weak, but you can end up, losing everything too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you do before you decided education? I'm curious. Have you?
So before I actually went into education, I was working in music production, and I was actually working as a tour promoter and management company. I had Last Heard Productions, which was my very first actual company beyond my grass cutting days of my teen years. And I ran that in my senior year of college at the University of North Florida, and then 2 years afterwards. And I put on concerts all over the state of Florida. I went on a hip hop tour, which was a bunch of hip hop artists from Florida. We went through a 7-city tour, all the big cities in Florida. Had lots of fun. As a young man, it was fantastic. I would never be able to do it today, but as a young man, it was an awesome experience. And I put on concerts at the University of North Florida. I put on concerts in Orlando. Also did some parties and so forth. And I did that for a total of 3 years. And then I put on one show that didn't do as well as expected, and I lost my little nest egg. And with concert promotion, you build a little nest egg because the industry is very volatile, like every industry.
Yeah.
But and you can never predict all of the outcomes for the concerts. You could have the best artists in the world, and yet still something might happen, and you might not make ticket sales. And so the margins are really slim most times. You might have a couple windfalls where it's just gangbusters and people are it's sold out and so forth, but those are far and few between for the most part, unless you're Taylor Swift, I suppose. I don't think she has too many duds now, but I'm sure early on in her career she certainly probably did. So anyway, I had amassed a little bit of a nest egg, and I did one concert, and the venue I did it at was a smaller venue. Unbeknownst to me, there was a bigger venue in town that was having the same type. It was a country concert, and they were having the biggest country star ever. And they had kept it a secret up until about 2 months before, and they unveiled that they were having this person. And their show was on Sunday, and my show was on Saturday. And everyone between Atlanta and Miami that was going to go to a concert, a country concert, went to the show on Sunday and not the show on Saturday. And so I was left kind of holding the bag, and my nest egg was gone. And I said to myself, well, what am I going to do now? And I happened to bump into one of the most successful show promoters, show producers in the state of Florida at the time. I had another show the following weekend. And he haphazardly kind of told me, he said, hey, I heard about your bath you took last weekend. And I was like, yeah, it was pretty bad. He's like, yeah, that's terrible. But that's the business. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah. That doesn't really make me feel that much better, but I appreciate it, so forth. Anyway, and he goes on to tell me this horrible story about how he was on his 5th marriage. He'd had so many houses foreclosed upon, he lost count. And he parks his car. He tells me he parks his car a mile away from his house, regardless of if things are good or things are bad, because he's had so many cars repoed. That's just what he does now. And when I tell you this is not someone who was scraping the bottom of the barrel, like the lowest of the low in this industry. He was the biggest star in the industry and within Florida and show production at the time. And it was someone I was very much looking up to. And he tells me this story, and I thought to myself, wow, Jerrid, I don't want that. I don't want that life. 5 marriages, too many houses. You can't even tell me how many houses he had foreclosed upon. And he literally walks a mile from his car to his house because he doesn't want to get repoed. And I said, man, I got to figure out another way. And what I found out was that there's professionals at every institution that help students put on concerts and events and so forth, and they get paid by the university or by the college. And I said, well, wow, that's kind of what I want to do. How do I do that? And then that led me into higher education. So
Wow.
I looked up, I did a quick Google search. I found Florida State University had a higher education program. I said, okay, well, let me go over there. I showed up on campus. I went to talk to the program because I had been involved in a lot of events and a lot of things during my undergrad experience, starting with Valencia. I'm a Valencia alum. Go Pumas. Starting at Valencia all the way through the University of North Florida, I'd been very involved. And so I got accepted. The next thing led to another. The following fall, I was in classes at Florida State University up in Tallahassee, and I was learning about the field of higher education. And it literally I came to the field not really by happenstance, because I lost a lot of money on a concert, and I said, you know what? I want to still put on concerts, but I don't want to put them on with my own money. How do I put them on with other people's money and get paid while I'm doing it? And also healthcare. Healthcare would be nice. As an entrepreneur, in the concert industry, I didn't have health insurance. Luckily I was on my parents' health insurance until I aged out. Back then it was basically once you graduate college, you're pretty much kicked off. Now it's at least 25. But I didn't have healthcare and any insurance, and a kidney stone around that same time ended up costing me about $15,000. And
Wow.
all I did was sit in the emergency room for 8 hours. Um,
Mhm.
and it still costs that much because they had to do imaging and so forth. So anyway, all of that kind of came together, and I said, okay, I'm going to become a higher education professional. And that's kind of the way I came to education. Um, so yeah, it's pretty wild, but I think it's pretty typical of an entrepreneur. So I worked
I
in
agree.
higher education, and then I fell in love with leadership and leadership development. I started teaching leadership courses. I had that experience with my former student, and I said, there's got to be a better way. And then I found social entrepreneurship, where you can use market-driven solutions uh, to create positive impacts. And it really could be a way for all of these students who it might come from wealth or might not come from wealth, but have a real desire to create positive change in the world to do so.
So some of this, because you and I had met at Rollins College, and they're very pro entrepreneur as a degree. Did you start the social entrepreneur program there at the campus?
No, no, I did not. I was there right when it started. There were some faculty members in the Crummer MBA program that were already doing social entrepreneurship um, courses and some other things. I think they hadn't yet taught a social entrepreneurship course, but there were certainly elements of those courses or of that type of programmatic and thematic aspects within their courses, and they're already doing that. And then um, some other individuals at the college were tasked with basically creating a program. And I was fortunate enough to be right there at that same moment. So I was teaching leadership courses, and I had experience with obviously campus programming and so forth. And so I volunteered whenever I could in helping, but I was not the one that actually built them. But I was there for the journey, and I was adjacent to the journey and certainly helped where I could. I did take that experience when I came to Valencia College, and I basically duplicated that same journey at Valencia, and we created a social entrepreneurship course. It was the first course in the state of Florida to be taught. Miami-Dade had a social entrepreneurship course on the books for about 2 semesters before Valencia did. However, they hadn't actually taught the course yet. They were getting ready to teach it. And then we created the course and we taught it. The first time was in spring of 2015. Then that stemmed into a student club, a speaker series, and then also a certificate program in social entrepreneurship. And that's been running well and every semester since 2015.
So I find that really fascinating. So when you wrote the book, and let's go ahead and talk about the book now,
Mhm.
Igniting Innovation, A Guide to Entrepreneurship and Positive Change. Um, you wrote this book. I don't have it. I don't know if I can get a signed version from you.
You
I'd love
certainly
that.
can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. But if you need help distributing, just let me know. Happy to be in part of your fan club and get the book out there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us about the book. Obviously, I can see why it's about positive change based on the stories that you just shared with us. But why did you choose this particular book to be the thing that you want to push out there as the message? Is it
Yeah.
because that's how strongly you feel about it? I would assume so.
Well, I do. I feel very strongly. I feel like business people, going back to the very, very beginning of entrepreneurship, business people want to solve problems, and they're really good at solving problems typically. Uh, and and along with that, they're good at making money. I mean, traditionally, that's the goal, right? To accumulate wealth. And so, long ago, and maybe not that long ago, I mean, when I was in school, in business school, a very traditional, typical program, it was basically make money or do good. I mean, that was kind of the dichotomy. And although it was never expressed that way, it was never out in the open. There was no signs up in the College of Business that said that. That was very clear that's you could either go and make money, and on your off time you can go and volunteer, or you can go and create change, or could go and create social impact, but you couldn't do them together. And I feel like social entrepreneurship is really just kind of bringing back the original essence of traditional entrepreneurship, in which business people are creating solutions to problems. And the solutions that business people are creating um, to the problems are for their customers, their clients. Um, Now, with social entrepreneurship, it's just expanded a little bit to creating solutions for society. Right?
Hmm.
How do we solve hunger or homelessness? Well, there's a myriad of reasons why people become hungry and why people become homeless, right? Well, how can we create enough of a solution to solve it? We're not going to be able to do that through community service alone. We're not going to be able to do that through philanthropy alone, right? People are continually given money for years, given time for years, and it hasn't generated a real solution. So how do we do it? Well, we've got market-driven solutions. We've got business people who know how to solve problems. And social entrepreneurship is the marriage of those two worlds together. So this book is it's a very quick um, appetizer to the field of creating change through entrepreneurship. It came really from all the conversations I've had for the past 16 or so years with young people and with colleagues and so forth, around how do we use business for good? How do we create thriving companies that make money, support our families, put food on the table, and all those things, and also don't deplete minerals, or don't ruin the environment, don't harm people.
Or
How do we do it
animals.
in a way that or animals, yeah, how do we do it in a way that helps all of those things and helps make money? And that's what social
So
entrepreneurship is.
is it considered a B Corp company?
Well, it could be. I mean, the B Corp companies, the benefit companies are great. Um, in fact, Dos Alas Latin Coffee, the coffee company that I co-founded in 2020, is on the road to becoming a B Corp through B Labs, and we're going through the certification process currently. It could be a B Corp, but it doesn't have to be a B Corp. Um, so a B Corp in the state of Florida, the very first one was Clean the World. And basically what that means is it's considered and classified as a benefit corporation, meaning that it has a social benefit or a social impact aspect to the company. Under the state of Florida, there's not any tax benefits to that. It's just more of a title to let people know what you are and how you do business. Um, in other states, there could be tax benefits. In other countries, there certainly is tax benefits, and priority in government contracts and some other things in some other places. Um, but in the state of Florida, there's no tax benefits to it. However, there's also B Labs, which is a an organization, B Corp corporation that certifies B Corps, and it's kind of an industry certification, industry standard. And what that does is it's completely independent of the government, but it will certify your company as a B Corp, which then tells people that you are in business to also benefit society and to create positive impact.
That's interesting. How did you hear about this place? I've never heard of it.
So B Labs, I heard about it. I probably from a conference. I'd imagine. I don't remember exactly, but if you just look up B Corp, just the letter B and then CORP, it'll come up. It'll be one of the first things that comes up, and you can get your organization certified by them. It's a pretty lengthy process, but if they certify your organization, then basically it will tell everyone else that you are legitimate. And when you say you're helping society, creating positive social change or creating social value, that you're actually doing so.
So we talked about this a little bit. You touched on it for sure. Social entrepreneurship combines the power of business with a desire for social impact. Definitely there. What values are most important to you when mentoring students or entrepreneurs who want to make a difference in the world? Do you lay this out in your book? Is this part of the roadmap that you created, and so people would know how to do
Yeah,
this?
yeah, sort of. I mean, you have to break it down to smaller pieces, right? Um, it is ostentatious to say, I want to change the world, right?
Yeah.
I want to create something that's going to impact people's lives on any kind of scale is huge. I mean, even if you're just doing it for a town or a province, it's huge, right? So, not very many people, not very many educated and well-meaning people come out and say, I want to change the world, and that's totally doable, right? So, but everyone can change the world, right? Everyone can change an aspect of the world or an aspect of their community. And so what I do with my conversations and in the book is I break it down to different pieces. The biggest thing is people have the best of intentions oftentimes. So you go to a conference and you get really excited about the topic, or you go to a workshop and you get really excited about a topic, or you listen to a podcast and you get really excited about the topic. And then you have the best of intentions, right? And you want to, now you've got a 10 points thing that you want to do, or this agenda that you want to do. But then you go back to your normal life, right? You go back to the kids, and the kids have homework, and the kids got this, and they got games and all this kind of stuff. You go back to your normal work day, and you've got, 3 deadlines that with one already passed, and, or, you go back to school and you've got, all these exams and tests and so forth and so forth and so on, right? Everyone's lives are very hectic and very crazy. And so all of a sudden your best of intentions what do they get? They get put in the drawer of your desk. They get put off to the side in a pile that's forgotten, and you never actually end up doing any of it. So how do you, in the face of reality, how do you actually start to make change? Well, it is incremental with yourself first, and it's really getting your mind frame and your mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset properly. So that way, when you get into the world of reality and you're actually in it, that you have the ability to do a little bit each day. That you have a little bit of motivation to do just a little bit to move you further along to your goal. The values, I think, the most important are resilience, the ability to be told no 10 times and still go and ask the 11th, the ability to fail and to learn from that failure and realize that failure is a stepping stone. It's a rung on the ladder. It's a necessary part of success. So that resilience is incredibly important. The ability to be a mentee, to realize in the world there's never a way that you're ever going to know everything. And most people go through life, they get to a point where they believe that they know what they need to know, and they stop listening to anybody else. And when they do that, they've now shut themselves off from real growth. And I try to, in my own life, I try to enter rooms in which I'm not the expert, where I can actually learn. I try to enter spaces where I'm not the expert. I try to do new things, and it's scary. It's scary to do all those things. It's scary to not be the expert. As a professor, as a tenured professor, it's scary for me not to be considered an expert, right? In a lot of ways. But with that being said, you have to not be an expert. You've got to be a beginner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was having this conversation with one of the project managers today. And I said, I think that on a scale of 1 to 5, if 5 is excellent or an expert, it's easier to have excellence than it is to be the expert, because technology moves so fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can be an expert it's like a balance sheet you have a snapshot. I'm an expert for at this day, at this moment in time, because now there's 3 other people out there that, are moving at a faster pace. The point of this whole conversation, though, to me is that there can be more than one expert. Collective wisdom is a good thing. And because that helps us to be iron sharpens iron, so that we're actually providing, more of a true thought leader. And a thought leader, I usually go, if this is all wisdom in the world, right? All knowledge. This is how much we all know at any one point in time. What's right between here? Because it's easier to provide excellence than it is to be an expert.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you are a good expert, Tell me if you
Mhm.
agree with this. What are your thoughts? If you are a good expert, then you're making other people, you're helping them to be experts. And if they become smarter than you, then isn't that part of the job?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, it's the same thing with leadership development. The greatest goal of a leader is to create other leaders.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's the biggest goal. Um, and and even though, and it's unfortunate that not everyone has that belief, that ability. But if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as leaders, we should be generating other leaders. We should be turning out other leaders, not just amassing followers. And when you see good leaders, that's exactly what they're doing. They are creating other leaders. They are creating other professionals, other experts. I mean, that's the highest goal, and if you can do it in a way that instills values, proper values, social impact values, values in which you're trying to make society better overall in those leaders, now you've really magnified the possible changes, right? It's a ripple effect. Um, and who knows? We've been teaching social entrepreneurship in Valencia since 2015, like I said, and we have 30 to 60 students every semester since then. So what, 10 years? We have at least three semesters or
Mhm.
more. I mean, so if we've done what we're supposed to do, there should be at least 1,000 new social entrepreneurs out there, that we've planted the seeds with. And some will create their own endeavors. Some will create their own companies, and they'll be very successful. And but I'd imagine a good majority of them are going to go to other companies, but they're going to bring that knowledge and that value set with them, and they could become social entrepreneurs, folks that are working within systems. And maybe it's okay. We can save, 10% if we go with this one company, but that company uses inferior products that are going to break that much faster and pollute this environment. Or we could spend 10% more and have longer longevity with the product, and it doesn't pollute the system. Well, maybe one of those social entrepreneurs that I taught, or that Valencia taught over the last 10 years, maybe they're the one that makes a decision between that. And they decide, you know what, we're going to spend 10% more because ultimately it better fits our mission, and it's going to better help our community. And those decisions happen every day.
Mm, I think so too. I totally agree. I I I know we're going to go back to that student here that was the that had the joy in her life, and then you saw her later. But I'll save that for maybe a little later on. So, what do you think? Your book is emphasizing the importance of innovation. How are you teaching that? How are you explaining that? And do you have exercises in there? Because I've not had it. I still want to get my
Hmm.
hands on your book. But
Absolutely.
what are the things that help an entrepreneur so that it's engaging, it's interactive, it's allowing those principles that you're sharing, because you have all of this wisdom, and I do consider you, to be honest, an expert in this, because it's experience that gives us the ability to become an expert, because you've done so many. We've done things well, and we failed and failed and failed and
Hmm.
failed. That's how we become an expert. So what is in your book that helps to make these things stick?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I talk a lot about in the book is resilience and
Mm,
building a resilient mind, and one that sees no as something that is, finite. In that, if you get a no today, that doesn't mean it's a no tomorrow. A lot of people get a no one time, and that book is closed, so to speak. They say, okay, that's done. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's done forever. So, one of the things that I share is resilience, and how you can build up your resilience. And a lot of that has to do with your mindset. A lot of it has to do with the ability to say, I'm being told no, or I didn't get XYZ, or I didn't succeed in ABC. Now I need to retool. I need to use this as a learning opportunity, not as an ending, but rather as a beginning. And when I go back to the drawing board, Why did I get told no? Why did I not succeed in XYZ? Why was I not able to do ABC? And reformat, right? I think it's Ben Franklin says, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 999 and I succeeded the 1,000th time.
Mm.
Right. And I don't know if I think it's Ben Franklin, but I'm not exactly positive about that. But it's the idea that, when you fail at something, that's not a horrible thing. As when we're growing up in school, like if we get an F, it's the end of the day. I mean, it's done. Everything, okay, now your parents yell at you or your guardians yell at you, you get grounded, et cetera, and it's done. But in life, an F or a failure is an opportunity to learn. And so that opportunity to learn is building that resilience. Also realizing that you're not an expert in all things and that you need to bring a team together, and that innovation, true innovation, is a meeting of the minds and trying out crazy things that you never think will work until they do. And what that means is when you're the manager, when you're the boss, or you're the entrepreneur in that situation, you have to allow your colleagues to fail.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to allow your colleagues to try new things. You can't say, "Oh, we tried that already. We've done that before. This is the way we have to do it." You have to be open to experimenting, open to failing.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to build an innovative spirit, an innovative team, people who are willing to take risks, or bring in people that might be afraid of risks, but teach them how to deal with it, and teach them how to start to become innovative and start to fail and celebrate those failures.
Mm-hmm.
And throw a fail off where you have everyone come together and talk about their biggest failure that they've had in their life. We almost always don't celebrate those things. You walk into any academics, any educator's professor anyway, any professor's office, and what do you see on the wall inevitably? Degrees. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You see the greatest successes they've had.
Yes.
Well, what you don't see in most professors' offices, but what you will see in my office, is my high school transcripts on the wall. And Isabella, I graduated from Orange County Public Schools here in Orlando with a 1.982 GPA.
Now, why was that? Why was it so low? It's not because you speak a second language, right? So that's not the barrier.
No.
Why was that?
No. It was. So again, just in case you weren't listening, I graduated from high school with a 1.982 GPA. I barely graduated. Now, why? Well, there's a whole lot of reasons. Ultimately, the reason was I didn't like school. I didn't like busy work.
That
I
is
hated
so
busy
amazing. Were you like a gifted student? Were you, your IQ was so high it was like so boring for you? That's what I'm thinking.
I'm sure that's probably the case. Unfortunately, when I was in most of grade school, all the way up through K through 12 system, they didn't have a lot of the good testing and so forth that they have now. But I'm sure that's what it was. I mean, most of my high school experience, I spent kind of being the class clown, joking around, playing around, because I hated busy work. I still hate busy work. I don't like to do something just to do it. I need to know how what I'm doing is impacting something greater. And when I was in high school, a lot of times we would get what I used to call them dittos, but they're little worksheets, paper worksheets. And every day you walk in, they give you a paper worksheet. Every day you walk in, they give you a paper worksheet. This is what we're doing today, day after day. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit down and devote energy to it because I felt like it was just busy work. I didn't see a purpose in it. And unfortunately for me, what that led to was I'd oftentimes get kicked out of class. I think I spent more time literally sitting in the hallway outside of my classroom than I ever did in the classroom, especially my latter 2 years of high school. And my teachers would get very upset with me. My high school teachers, anyway, would get really upset because they would put me out in the hallway. And the reason why they were putting me in the hallway is because they didn't want to do the paperwork to send me to the office with a referral. So they would just put me in the hallway. And they'd put me in the hallway. And then I would come back in after being in the hallway for an entire week, and I'd take the exam or with a test, and I'd still get a C on it, having never sat through any of the lecture or any of the educational stuff. I'd get a C, and then they'd be dumbfounded. Most of the time, they thought I was cheating, but everyone around me they'd get Fs, and I'd get a C, and they just couldn't figure it out. It wasn't until my senior year when the real threat of not graduating from high school was in jeopardy, and I had a really great guidance counselor, Mr. Rogers, not the Mr. Rogers, but a Mr. Rogers, was my guidance counselor, and he brought me in very early senior year and said, "Jerrid, you're not going to graduate from high school. Do your parents know you're not going to graduate from high school?" And they did not. They didn't know about my terrible grades and so forth. And
How is that
like,
possible,
no.
Jerrid? How could that possibly be? Because every school you have to go meet the teacher. And again, the person you're describing is not this person that is sitting in front of me now. I'm going, there is no way that was you. I sat there, I'm going, no, I do not believe this for 1 minute.
That's
but I know,
hilarious.
because it's
well, I mean, and I think
the
that's
epitome of learning.
Well, I think that's what helps me be effective in the classroom.
Yeah.
Is that I've been exactly where, the worst of the worst kids in terms of education, terms, I wasn't getting in trouble with the law or anything like this, but as far as just being a bad student, I was really good at being a bad student.
That's amazing. And certainly there was no parent teacher conference apparently going on.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, again, I feel like I was pretty intelligent and certainly very skilled at creating excuses and so forth about why there wasn't report cards coming home and why there wasn't teacher conferences and so forth. But my senior year, when I had that conversation with Mr. Rogers, and he really laid it out, no sugarcoating anything. He's like, "You're not going to graduate from high school, and what does that mean for you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I have to go to college." My father, particularly, but also my mother, had instilled that college was the only way out of blue collar work, the only way out of barely making it a living. And I'm not saying that blue collar work is not a good thing. My entire family is blue collar. I'm very proud of that fact. But as all parents want better for their kids, and so they really saw college as a vehicle, and so it really scared me when Mr. Rogers said that. And what I ended up doing was he helped me put together a plan, and I went. One of the key things of that plan was getting my hat in hand and going and talking to my 9th grade creative writing teacher to see if they would give me a chance to bring up my grade. I had gotten an F in creative writing. And basically because I just didn't do the assignments. But I went and did that. And she said, no, you can't make up anything. And then I had to go back to Mr. Rogers, say, no, I couldn't do it. And so I ended up going to night school my senior year. And I got enough credits and I barely made it by. And again, I was under the 2.0 grade point average. Now, lucky for me, the following school year, they put in place in Orange County Public Schools. I don't know if it's still there, but at the time, the year after I graduated, they made a minimum GPA requirement of 2.0 to graduate with a high school diploma in Orange County Public Schools in the state of Florida. The year after I graduated.
Wow.
If that had been 1 year earlier, thank God for bureaucracy. Because if that was 1 year earlier, I wouldn't have graduated.
Wow. Okay. So just so you know, I looked up your statement. You said 999 times a failure, and the 1,000th is when learning took place. It was Thomas Edison that said that.
Thomas Edison. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I know this is going to stick with you and I both because, we took the time, one of us here, you were the storyteller. So I'm going, well, let me go fact check that.
Yeah,
so I looked it up and so now we both know. And this is where you said humility is one of the best things that comes out of learning. And here you are, you're totally being humble, Jerrid, as always. I know that to be true too. So, and you probably did this on purpose just to have me check it. Is what I would say.
I wish. Yeah, I wish I had the foresight because that was a perfect example. But Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny because in my doctoral program, um, there was some folks not in my cohort, but folks in general that even though they were in a doctoral program, they didn't want to learn. They didn't want to take feedback. They
That's
wanted to become
crazy.
defensive and not truly be a student. You know, yes, in doctoral programs, you're becoming an expert, but you are also a student. And while you're in the program, before they confer your degree, you're still a student. And
Yep.
but so many people, I think that's why there's such a high rate of failure with doctoral programs, in that so many people kind of go in with a mind frame of, I already know everything, and I don't want to be told no. I don't want to be told I need to fix something. Um, and I think that's the exact wrong approach. If you want to be an entrepreneur, that is a terrible, terrible, terrible approach. Unless you're independently wealthy and you could fail and 100 times and still have the money to continue on, you better listen to some people. Not everybody, but you better listen to some people. And
Yep.
and you better look for mentors that have done the things you want to do, because they can, if you are humble and you approach them with kindness, they'll probably reciprocate and they'll help you along.
Mm.
You know, there's really two ways to learn. There's one, you could be told and follow, or you could ignore and learn the hard way. The road,
Mm-hmm.
the road of hard knocks. You go out and you fail, and then you can learn that way.
Mm.
Or you could listen.
That is a valuable lesson. We're going to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and we will be right back.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat 5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat 5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat 5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat 5 Studios.
So here we are in the second half of the show. We always talk about the future of jobs and what industries are going to look like in 2030. Not that far away, because we're turning 2025 next year. Now, we probably aren't going to have as much time to go through our questions. This has been so fascinating. I did not know all of this about you. And so now I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, this is a whole level of depth I didn't know. And that probably is where a lot of students can relate to you if you share that story.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I have my high school transcript on my wall.
Yeah.
And it is right next to all of my degrees. I've got counting them up, about five or six degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And if you walk into a typical professor's office, you'll see the myriad of degrees and all the successes and the awards they've won. What you won't see is the failings. I'm fortunate enough to have my failings framed. And I went back to Orange County Public Schools and I got my official transcripts from high school, and I framed them and I put them up on my wall. And that helps me with working with students, because I think some of the best students I've had are students who were not good students originally. And they learn, whether it be people that are non-traditional coming back, after they've been out in the world and worked and so forth for a number of years, or coming back at 30 or at 40 or 50. Or there's just students that, messed up, had to drop out of a university and now they're at Valencia. And those often are the best students, because they have this great motivation to succeed, because they haven't succeeded in the past.
I think what you're talking about, this leads into the first question that we have about the future. As an educator, what are your thoughts about how AI will impact the future of higher ed? But do you think that it has the potential to revolutionize learning? Or are there risks we need to consider? What I think that you're pointing out is, I always love the underdogs too. The people that everybody goes, oh no, he was like, that kid totally messed up. I was one of those also. I didn't get in a lot of trouble, but it took me a while to understand concepts and to be able to get there. And I would stay after school with my algebra 1, algebra 2 teacher, and I go, okay, I don't get it. And then all of a sudden the light bulb came on. So when we're talking about how AI can impact the future of education, it can make us faster for sure. but it can revolutionize learning. That is also for sure. But there's this human component that I think has to stay. It has to be there. We're human creatures. We require being around each other in social settings. We weren't born out of technology. And technology shapes how we think and we believe and how we interact with things, but we still are needing humans to be able to challenge us in different ways too. So what do you think AI can have on the potential to revolutionize learning? Because I really think it's going to require us staying human and connecting.
No, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. I think at a very basic level, AI is the newest way to cheat at a very basic level, right?
Yeah.
So if you're asking yes or no questions, if you're asking what's the definition of XYZ, if you're asking when did this war take place, all of those things can be done with AI in a nanosecond. And if those are the questions you're asking as an educator, then students are going to utilize AI at the most basic level just to cheat. With that being said, AI has a tremendous ability to revolutionize thinking because it enables the user or the learner to not have to recall random facts and figures and so forth, but rather it enables them to learn how to think. And that thinking is what can really push us forward. And what I mean by that is you know, as an educator, you can't ask simple questions. You have to ask how a situation makes a student feel and how a situation can be viewed from a multitude of ways. You need to ask about solutions, not necessarily for just the quick answer. And if you do that, then what the students are going to be able to do is they could use all of the technology in the world, but they'll use it in a way to help them think better. They won't be concerned about memorizing facts and figures of random stuff they could look up, but rather they can spend their time really learning how to learn, which is the most impactful thing we can do as educators. It's just like when calculators were developed, long hundreds of years ago, maybe 100 years ago. I don't know exactly. But when a calculator, I guarantee when the first calculator came out, math teachers around the world were, oh no, this is terrible. They're going to use it to cheat. And at a very most basic level, the students did use it to cheat. But in our lifetime, has there ever been a time where we had to do long division or long multiplication and not have a calculator handy?
No,
of course not. So it'll be the same thing with AI, which is the same thing, with AI utilizing it for business. If it's used as a tool and used to augment our human thinking, then it's going to be powerful and it'll be useful. But at a most basic level, if it's used to be unethical and dishonest and plagiarizing, etc., then that's going to be the case as well.
So what do you think AI's influence could be on social entrepreneurship? How could it be there to help benefit? Because one of the ways that I'm finding is, I'll have to talk with you offline. You're going to have to tell me when you're available, because I'm working on some grants that I want to do with Valencia College. Anyway, I feel like on the side of social entrepreneurship, it can be helpful with writing grants or being able to figure out roadmaps and things of that nature of how to me, AI is like Google on steroids. It's just like, boom, I don't have to read through 5 or 6 pages to find it. I can actually get those 5 or 6 pages consolidated into information in seconds, where, it took me a lot of time to do that.
Absolutely. And again, it's a tool. So, if a business person or anyone in the world looks at AI and goes, this is going to solve all my problems, then they're completely wrong. If all you have is a hammer, everything begins to look like nails, right?
Yeah.
But just like a good tradesman has a toolbox full of tools for all kinds of different things to fix, AI will become one of the tools in the toolbox. And what what it can do is speed things up. It can make some things a lot easier, make things a lot faster. You don't have to read 20 pages. You could ask AI to summarize the 20 pages, and then all of a sudden you get a summary. Well, that's great, but you still have to know what to do with the summary. You still have to know what to do with the graphs it creates or the stuff it does. If you just take it off the printer or off the screen and go, okay, this is great, you're going to be in trouble, right?
Yeah, because you're not fact checking it.
You're not fact checking. You don't know what it says. You don't know what it does. And companies. I created a case study pretty early on in the AI, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, of a marketing firm. And in the case study I wrote for my students, basically the marketing firm decides that they are going to use ChatGPT and it's going to solve all their problems. So they fired all their copywriters except for one, and they fired all their copy editors except for one. They said, okay, now you're going to do everything for the entire firm, because we don't need writers. We have the AI, we have ChatGPT, so it's going to write everything. Well, when you do that, and if you believe that, now all of your marketing that's going to go out for all the firms you work with is going to be generated by AI. And you're not going to have enough people to review it. You're not going to have enough people to check it, to fact check it, to make sure it makes sense. Make sure it has the right jargon in it. Make sure it has the right innuendos in it. All of these
sounds
things.
Human.
Yeah, sounds human. You're going to get yourself into trouble. And so the case study I wrote was that they had a really big firm, a really big contract, and the marketing was completely wrong. And the big campaign came out and it was completely wrong. And now the big firm, which accounted for 60% of the marketing firm's revenue per year, is now gone. They're threatening to leave, and they're giving the marketing company, one last chance to explain what they're going to do in the future to remedy the situation. Otherwise, the 60% of their revenue is going to walk out the door. And that's the case study, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guarantee that's happened already. I guarantee those kinds of things have already gone on. You look at what newspapers, if they're still open, what newspapers are doing. They're going, the staffs are minuscule in comparison to what they used to be, and so forth.
Yeah.
And part of that is because they're putting too much emphasis on all the great things AI can do, and not really thinking through that it's only a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a powerful tool, and it has the ability to really revolutionize our world in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, it's still just a tool.
So what ethical dilemmas do you see? Because this is like, yeah. Let's focus on two, because I feel like there's quite a few, and I feel like one of them should be that there needs to be certification processes in place. And I'm gonna design this to be able to demonstrate that a person is ethically knowledgeable and compliant with best practices and how to use AI in their work role, whatever that might be. So I'm seeing it with CEUs, continuing education elements in there. I see it as something that can be validating that somebody is ethical in the use of it, and they would be a good provider or teacher in that area or facilitator. Like, I feel like there's going to be so many places where that would be valuable. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, again, just like any computer program, right? The computer itself doesn't have any ethics. It inherits the ethics of the programmer. And so AI is the same way. AI in itself has no values. It has no beliefs. It has no ethics on its own. It inherits those from the user. And so, the AI doesn't have a lot of this. I mean, what I mean by that is that AI inherently could be completely unethical, and it wouldn't know any difference. And you can use AI in a whole myriad of ways that could be unethical, could be unreasonable, whether it be cheating on a test or turning in, an assignment, or turning in a report for work that is 100% AI generated, right? Is that unethical? There's already been stories in which AI has created false news clippings of events and of things that happened that never really happened. I mean, if we start to, people could use AI and say, okay, well, you know what? Sally Joe was fired from her first employer because she stole $1 million. And if I put that into an AI, one AI, well, then 3 months later, there's 10 articles about Sally Joe who stole $1 million from her employer, and there is no Sally Joe, and there's no $1 million from the employer, but it will start to build upon itself.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it was never true to begin with. There's all kinds of things you can do. And again, it's a tool, right? It is a tool. It could be used for good or it could be used for bad, like all things, right? I think we are way behind the 8 ball in terms of developing ethical standards for use of AI. I think we're way behind the 8 ball in terms of establishing proper uses of AI in all of our fields. Whether it be education, whether it be marketing, or industry, any industry, right? We need to start to look at those questions and start to answer some of them for ourselves, and what we will do and what we won't do with this tool.
So hard to believe. We didn't even talk about your coffee store, your coffee business. You get 2 minutes to talk about your coffee business, because I want that to get out there too.
Yeah. So in 2020, I co-founded Dos Alas Latin Coffee. It means 2 wings in Spanish. And it comes from a Puerto Rican independence poet. And she wrote that Cuba and Puerto Rico were 2 wings of the same bird, Dos Alas. And my wife is half Puerto Rican and half Cuban, and so she is Dos Alas. She and I actually met at Starbucks in Tallahassee. We both happened to work there. She was my boss at Starbucks, and I was persuasive enough to convince her to date me. And so she's been telling me what to do now for almost 17 years.
That's a good love story.
Yeah. So we've always loved coffee, and we had an opportunity to become partners. Our former co-founder had an idea of creating a coffee company that was centered around Latin coffee. The café con leche, the cortadito, the coladas. And so that's what we specialize in. We specialize in Latin flavors, very high quality Cuban coffee, and pastries and so forth. And we serve the best café con leches, I believe, in all of Florida. We've served them down in Miami, and we got rave reviews, and we've served them all the way up in Atlanta, and we've gotten rave reviews. So we have we take the traditional and we mix it up with a little bit of innovation. And we have some really neat Cuban-based coffees and pastries and so forth.
So does that, is the coffee, do you include some kind of elements of social
Yes,
entrepreneurship
absolutely.
in there?
Absolutely. So the whole reason why I got involved in it is that I had been out of the business world about 5 years. And I was like, well, if I'm going to teach it, I feel like I have to do it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to teach it. And I had been out about 5 years, and I was like, you know what? I've never had a social enterprise. This is exciting to me. And so, yes, we baked in social entrepreneurship. So number one, all of our paper goods are 100% sustainable. They're compostable. So the cups we use, the lids we use, even the straws we use are all compostable. So they're all, using not single use, stuff where it just goes in the landfill. Yeah. It all can be composted. We use our beans or our grinds. We do grinds for the garden. We're also working on creating fire logs with the grinds, where you can mix them with sawdust and make them into bricks to be fire starters for fireplaces, fire pits, outdoor ovens, etc. And so we're working on developing those. We also pay our employees better than our going rate. So all of our employees get a sustainable living wage. And then we only do business with people who who are also leading a social impact or value-based organization. So right now we have two units. We have a mobile trailer that we use for outdoor events and pop-up events. And then we have a kiosk that could be moved into spaces. So we do quinces and weddings and different things for folks that want an espresso bar.
That's cool. I love it. Now, best mentoring advice that you want to share with our listeners about the future.
Yeah. So my best mentoring advice is be open to change.
Mm-hmm.
Be open to different ways of thinking. Be aware that there are oftentimes multiple truths to a situation, and there are other ways of thinking. And if you're open to those things, I think you'll go a lot further than if you're closed off.
I would agree with you. I know you had said one step at a time also. That's a significant statement.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
So why is that important?
One step at a time. So one step at a time is because nothing great happens overnight. A lot of people, going back to my music industry days, a lot of people think the one-hit wonder or the came overnight success. That the singer-songwriter that just hit all of a sudden out of nowhere. They got one YouTube video and it got picked up. Well, no, it was 5 years of YouTube videos or 10 years of touring before they get that break, right? Success happens to those that are prepared for it. Luck happens to those that work for it. Yes, there could be a person that picks up a guitar for the very first time and they make a great hit. That is very, very few and far between. And so it takes one step at a time, and nothing great happens overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. And so if you could move in the right direction, one step at a time, eventually you'll get there.
So how can people, what's the website for the coffee? You might have to spell it for our listeners.
No worries. It's Dos Alas. It's DOS ALAS, Latin LATIN, coffee.com.
Okay.
And that is also on all of the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, although, might be banned soon, who knows? But it's out there. And all those.
And then what about your LinkedIn? How can people find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, just LinkedIn is my name. I know is spelled a little bit creatively. My parents were Scrabble champions in the late 70s. So when they heard Jerrid, they heard it on the TV show and they just sounded it out. So it's Jerrid. And then my last name is Czechoslovakian. It's Kalakay, Kalakay. So it's Jerrid, Kalakay.
That's easy. You got a lot of A's in there. So it's like every other one is an A. That's easy. And your book is on Amazon.
Yes, the book is on Amazon. It's out now. Igniting Innovation, a guide to entrepreneurship and positive change. And you could either look it up by my last name or you could look it up by the book title.
Oh,
and it is in
helpful.
and it's in paperback and on Kindle or e-readers.
Very, very nice. Well, Jerrid, this has been a delightful time to have you on my show. I cannot begin to say how much I have enjoyed it. I have laughed. I have learned stuff. I've gotten all of these benefits, and I am sure that the listeners will too. So thank you so much, and buy his book. That'll be my advice to them. Buy his book. He has kids. He's got to put his kids through college. Yeah,
we do. We have 3 kids, and I'd love the time I got to spend with you, Isabella. It's always a joy and always fun time. And this was especially fun for me to share some thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank our sponsor, Cat 5 Studios, and thank you to our video production and editing team. Gavin Staley is our video editor, and music is by Sophie Lloyd. The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Employers for Change, helping hiring teams to recruit and upskill their intern talent and employees. Learn more about Employers for Change at www.e4c.tech and become a member to reduce employer bias and improve company culture through head and heart smart recruiting and learning. Subscribe to the Intern Whisperer today and show your support by sharing our show, tagging a friend to listen, and leaving us comments. You can find the Intern Whisperer podcast on Employers for Change YouTube channel or streaming from your favorite podcast channel.